Brad, you know how they always talk about how Captain America, they always make a big deal about, oh, he's a New York boy, he's a Brooklyn boy, he's 1940s Brooklyn boy, classic Americana, right?
Yeah.
But the funny thing is about the way Chris Evans, who I think did a wonderful job in Captain America, the funny thing about the way he plays him is there's not an ounce of New York accent in that Captain America.
Nothing. He might as well be from Kansas.
I was going to say, he sounds like neutral Americana. You know how they always hire for national news broadcasters? They always read the news in neutral Americana. I'm from Kansas, or perhaps from, just some Midwestern state. And that's what Captain America sounds like. He sounds like, and in the weather today. But, like, can you imagine if they actually played it as though he was from 1940s Brooklyn?
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, that'd be great.
Hey, I could do this all day, Brad. Hey, I'm Captain America.
Hey, I love the self-announced impersonation. That's always, I'm always here for that.
Hey, I'm assembling over here. Avengers assemble. Hey, we're assembling over here.
And it's even perfect if he's got that New York attitude, right? He's got that real in-your-face New York way of life.
Like, exactly. He's fighting Germany. He's fighting, now he's fighting the Red Skull. Hey, get out of my way. I'm Captain America over here. Like, check out. Also, the things that he would talk about incessantly would be the shield. Hey, did you see this shield? Holy shit, look at this. Go ahead, take a shot at me. Go ahead, shoot that gun. Shoot the gun. I said shoot the gun.
Right at my head. Shoot the gun right at my head. You're not going to hit me. I got the shield. Look at this shield.
Jimmy, take your pistol out and shoot my shield, I said. Shoot my shield. I'm Captain America.
Oh, yeah. He would have an amazing amount of pride around that shield.
I would love to see that version of Captain America. Hey, we're fighting Thanos. Look at you. All right. On that note, I'm going to say hello, everybody, and welcome to ComicLab, the show about making comics.
I got your Infinity's gems right here.
He grabs his crotch.
And making a living from comics, I'm Brad Guigar, the author of the Webcomics Handbook and the creator of Evil Inc.
And I'm his pal Dave Kellett, cartoonist of Drive and Sheldon and co-director of Stripped.
And this week's hour of comics advice is made possible by your support at patreon.com/comiclab. So Dave, let's talk comics.
Let's talk comics, my friend. We have a huge show, really fun topics to talk about this week. But before I mention that, I got to tell you, you could be watching this show live right now with our Live Gab group. Every week we are streaming live, and I'm waving to them right now. There is a concurrent chat that's going along with it, and we answer questions and comments, concerns, considerations, and compliments before, during, and after the show. Join us over at patreon.com/comiclab. And every week the show is archived, so if you miss it for Life, Love, or Learning, you can watch it there. And Brad, I got 2 bits of alliteration in there. Stanley would be proud. I got Life, Love, and Learning, compliments, considerations, critiques, compliments.
You are operating at peak Stan Lee efficiency right now.
I tell you what, if there's another boy in Brooklyn that would be proud of me, I tell you what, David, that was fantastic alliteration. That was great.
Fantastic.
Well, Bradley, fantastic. Let's jump into the show, my friend. What do we got for everybody this week?
We've got a great topic to start out with. Listen to this. This comes into us from a ComicLab backer who says, I've been making comic strips and sharing them online since 2010. I love it. There's nothing more satisfying than sharing my comics with my corner of the internet. And there's the problem. For years, I posted a comic every day, a wee bit of cargo culting, he says. And unfortunately, I got addicted to the small dopamine rush of having people see it. Here's my question. I want to make consistently good comics so I can grow my audience. And I want time to be my editor. But I'm constantly falling into the trap of instant gratifications. Any tips for a recovering dopamine addict? So, Dave, here's a guy that has listened to our Writer's Room episodes where we said, let time be your editor. And in other words, write something that you think is funny. This specifically goes for humor writing, and you can use it in all kinds of writing, but it's particularly powerful for humor writing. Write something that you think is funny and then let it sit for a few days. Even a week is really good, because when you come back to it, you're going to be in a different mindset, much like your reader would be, and you'll be able to say that you haven't quite gotten there yet and you need to push that concept. And we talk about lots of ways of pushing that concept. So when he's talking about let time be your editor, That's what he's talking about. He's talking about that, letting it sit before you post it and then reworking it, editing it, pushing it. He's saying, I just can't do that. I got to post it right now. What advice do you think we could give a person like that?
Well, here's the good news. You're talking to two folks who at one point in our careers were posting 7 days a week. And gosh, I remember those days. Those were the salad days of cranking out Greystone Inn and Sheldon and all that sort of stuff. And we did it. We did it happily. And it is tricky to downsize because it's both the dopamine hit that's being removed and also this odd and unnecessary sense of failure. I think it's fair to say, Brad, that like I was doing 7. Now I'm only doing 4 a week. Now I'm only doing 5 a week. Now I'm only doing 3 a week, whatever it is. And I think both Brad and I would say that we get it. We understand what that dopamine hit is, because that is kind of the sweetest plum of cartooning, is sharing it, putting it out there and like, there it is, world. Look what I've done. Look what I've made. And for me, what it was it was kind of logic having to fight over the emotion, the chemical reaction of, now I have put up a comic. I had to basically tell myself, in the same way that you kind of have to do when you're making any lifestyle change, like a diet or working out more, like, no, regardless of what I feel that I need to do, this is what needs to be done. This is the logical choice. This is the thing that has to be done. What would you say, Brad?
Well, here's the deal. If you were to send this question into any number of places where you could get advice creatively, they're going to tell you the same thing. It's going to come down to two things. Self-control and discipline. I mean, and that is the answer to your question. It's self-control and discipline. I hear what you're saying. You're reading in between the lines. You've been doing this for a while, and you are in a situation where you're like, listen, it isn't going anyplace, and the reason for that is that the writing isn't hitting. And so you're wise in seeing that this is a change that you need to make. I think it probably is a change that you need to make. However, I don't know about you. I don't know about Dave, but I know about most of the creative people that I talk to, and self-control and discipline are not among our skill set. I know that for me. I know that for a lot of people. Self-control and discipline it does not come easily to us. So getting the standard answer is that you're going to get any number of different places is no good. So ComicLab, we got to go above and beyond for this person. We got to help them out. I'm
fascinated to see where you're going with this. All right.
I've got such a great, I've been working on this problem. Because he gives us, there's always a clue in these questions. He gives us exactly what we need. He's been doing this for on a daily basis since 2010. He's got 12 years of what? Archives that maybe, and I don't know, I haven't read this person's comics, but maybe did not miss the mark. And what does he have? A whole bunch of time between those archives and where his brain is now. So here's what I want you to do. Here's your strategy. I want you to continue writing new things, stuff that you're going to write and then let sit. And then when you need that dopamine hit, I want you to go back to comic number 1 in your archive and rework that comic and post it. That's going to be your dopamine hit. And it's going to be two things. It's going to give you that experience of rewriting a comic, editing, finding the funny, pushing the concept. It's going to give you that dopamine hit you're craving. It's going to build in the time that you need for that new stuff you're working on. And you're going to go to the next day. And the next day, you're going to write something again. And you're going to put it in the hopper and you're going to let it sit. And then you're going to go to number 2 in the archive. Maybe it needs to be redrawn a little bit. Maybe it needs to be spiffed up a little bit. It definitely probably needs to be rewritten a lot, right? And you're going to rewrite that one. And you're going to get more exercise, more experience on perfecting the comedy, pushing the comedy, making that not settling for clever, but pushing all the way to funny. And you're going to post that and get a dopamine hit. You're going to rework those old comics to give you dopamine hits. And in so doing, you're going to build in, I'm going to say a week until you start posting new stuff. And then once you're like a couple weeks down the road, you got new stuff you're posting, you got old stuff that you're reworking and posting, you got new stuff that you're writing and letting sit, and you can start a whole assembly line that actually delivers more dopamine, more positive reinforcement for your creative process than even you were getting now. I don't want you to go back to posting every day. I want you to, instead of giving hamburgers every day, I want you to offer steak a couple times a week. But to keep you going in that meantime, you've got 12 years of archive comics that probably need to be rewritten. And this is how you're going to do it. It satisfies everything you need. It gives you those updates. It gives you more practice, and it gives you time. What do you think, Dave Kellett?
Listen, I love the idea of making use of an archive. I will be honest that for the first time in a long time, I strongly dislike one of your ideas, and I really disliked.
I've been waiting to voice this on him for a week, and you don't like my idea. What's wrong with my idea?
With love, I'm not saying this in any sort of antagonistic way. I just really dislike the idea of reworking and rewriting archives, because I feel like that way lies madness in that you can get recursive very quickly. And when does it stop the rewriting? And also, why go back for a million reasons? Why go back and review history? Work forward, not backward. And so I like the idea of mentally setting a challenge for yourself to rewrite one. And I do that every once in a while. I'll be like, no, here's this punchline was too chewy. You can take out these 4 words. I can reduce this over here. I can move the punch word toward the end. Yes, I do that in my mind when I look at my archives, but I don't actually spend the time on because you're not working on new stuff. You're bringing out, yesterday's cheese to serve it to somebody. And we all know what they say about yesterday's cheese. Why did I use that? Anyway,
wait a minute. Yesterday's cheese is better cheese. It's aged cheese.
That's why I was laughing. It's a shitty comparison. Anyway, I will say this, though. You're right to use your archive, though, for pure dopamine hit. Yeah. Sometimes I will reread my own archive I have a random button, and I'll click through it just to get to a random comic. And what's great about that is I see what works, what didn't work from 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. And what's also good is occasionally I will hit one that triggers an idea that's in the family of that original one, but I have a whole new avenue to walk down for tomorrow's comic, right? So that's good. But then also I occasionally see a cartoon where I go, why not share this again? This is great. It's been 10 years since I posted this. I'm going to share it right now. Bada bing, bada boom. A dopamine, as Captain America would say, bada bing, bada boom. Dopamine hit. So it's a dopamine hit. And then also, I think, like Brad, I would use a writing exercise as a dopamine hit, but I would suggest this is that workshop your potential jokes, your potential storylines on Twitter. That is a no stakes way to work out jokes that you can then tweak, get public reaction to, see how people read or incorrectly read where you were going with it, and then tweak it accordingly so that when you work it into your comic, it's ready to go. But Again, so I love the idea of using the archives. I love the idea of using social media as the dopamine hit. I don't love the idea of going back and retreading, which is what that feels like to me. Because it feels like it could get recursive very quickly and doesn't necessarily walk you forward.
And to be fair, I'll even take your side on this for a moment. To be fair, every time somebody has written in with a question that said, "Hey, I want to rework my old work," our advice has been the same: don't do it. Don't rework your old stuff. Be nice to that old cartoonist or that younger cartoonist that you used to be. And I still feel the same way about that. I wouldn't get into that unless it was a writing exercise where I was trying to say, take that and use that as a learning thing. Not I need to improve it before the book comes, but as a writing thing. And you're right. I may have not given the best advice there.
Well, so I would like to clarify because I don't quite understand. So you're saying it's all about motivation. If the motivation is to rework the work just to do it, you're saying that's bad. But if the motivation is to get a dopamine hit of something, then it's okay to rework the work.
Yeah, I guess that's where I was, because I'm telling you, every time, because everything you said stays with our advice about don't rework old work, right?
Yeah.
Because you starts a loop and you never break free of the loop. You never catch up with yourself, and it prevents you from doing new stuff. I would do it as an exercise, yes, and maybe as a mental exercise to say, okay, how would I redo that? And I was trying to think of a way where he could get that satisfaction of posting something to reward himself for doing that. But you're right. It gets back into that same recursive loop. And yes, I think it's motivation. I think one of those, it's a question between not having the confidence in your old work, which I reject, right? And using that old work that you see did not hit the mark and using it as a learning experience. And I guess the only reason I have slightly different opinions on those two things is where that person's head is at. Right.
Okay. Yeah. And I see that. But well, let me ask you this. Do you, when you go back through your archives, do you mentally rewrite certain lines, certain punchlines?
Rewrite them? No, I literally, I go through and I go, oh, that one worked. That one stunk. That one stunk.
Yeah. I do that too.
Stunk.
Yeah.
That one worked.
Have you ever taken a 5-year-old file, 10-year-old file, opened it back up, rewritten it, and then posted the changed version?
Never.
See, I feel like this is what you did do, even though you're saying that it is the advice that everyone would give that you don't disagree with. What you did do, Brad, is you buckled down over your emotions, and you were aggressive in saying, no, this needs to be done. Logically, this needs to be done. My emotion wants a dopamine hit, but the logic in me is telling me that I have to improve my evil ink. And so you went to a page format, you reduced the output. The truth is, what you did was what I suggested, which doesn't sound sexy, but it's true. It's not unlike being on a diet or changing your exercise routine. You just have to logic your way through shitty emotional moments and say, this needs to be done. And I will say, for my own benefit, or from my own experience, that a way you do that is personal accountability. So if you have a dopamine hit of, and I don't know what your publishing schedule is it's 7 days, 5 days, 4 days, whatever it is now, make a note that now you're going to go to X number of days. That's it. You're going to reduce it down to X number of days, but you're going to hit them all. Right. And then I want you to put up a schedule or something that makes you accountable to yourself about, like, no, I'm going to spend X, since I previously had spent X number of hours producing 7 comics. Now, if I'm only going to do 5 comics, I have X number of more hours of the day. Now I'm going to apply this to my writing, this to my drawing, but schedule that out, because that accountability is really your, I guess what I'm saying is you have to sergeant major yourself about this and just kind of make logic be the part that's driving you, saying, no, my emotions are not going to win. I know what I have to do. These are the 10 steps. I'm going to make it accountable to myself, and I'm going to power through it. Because I think that's what you and I did, Brad, if we're honest about it.
Yeah. Oh no. I
like, no one's more scheduled than Brad Geiger. Let's be honest about it. You are regimented. You are regimented.
I am very, very, I guess to that degree, I am very disciplined in that I do keep a calendar and a schedule, and this thing gets done by this and that gets done by that.
I've seen snippets of your life. You're incredibly regimented and disciplined with yourself. Like you,
I mean,
let logic rule your...
The hair alone is
look
regimented.
at it compared to my hair, by the way. And for everyone watching on the live stream, this is what happens when you shower right before you go to bed. You end up looking like the 6th member of the Jackson 5, you know?
No, you know what, Dave? I gotta say, you've turned me around. I don't think that I would suggest that for this person. I don't think I would suggest that strategy. Because you're right. It does have that element of creating this recursive loop. So what does our advice come down to? The same advice everybody else would give them: self-discipline and control. But maybe that's an important thing to learn.
Well, yeah, that's what I was going to say. It's not sexy, it's not fun, but it's kind of the school marm aspect of having to be a cartoonist is sometimes you have to put on your editor hat and don't let the whimsical artist win, because the whimsical artist wants it all to be sunshine, rainbows, and dopamine hits. And the editor is like, no, you son of a bitch, you got to put in the time and do it better and regiment your life a little bit more and have more discipline. And so I will tell you, listen, I fail all the time. There's a reason why I have that giant magnetic a calendar up in my studio where I move things around, is because if I don't have physical reminders digitally, physically, written on notepads, the whimsical artist in me is like, oh, let's draw another pony, la 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 la. I've got to tell myself, no, I've got to do the cartoon, and it's got to be done in X amount of time, and it's got to be done well. So yeah, I really think like the answer here is increase discipline, increase use of logic over emotion, and regiment your life a little bit more with accountability.
All right, Dave, when I'm going to try to redeem myself with a couple of updates, what do you think?
I love it, Brad. And by the way, you need no redemption. I share your.
No. I think you did have the better call on that one. I think I would have ended up leading that poor person astray. But I am going to try to come back from that. I am going to try to come back strong from that. You leave me to my Catholic guilt, and I'll get there. We've got an update on another Substack story. Remember, we've been talking all year. And also, by the way, Dave, right now we're recording this in late October, which means that probably the show is coming out in early November. We're coming to the end of 2022. We made a lot of predictions at the beginning of this year. At some point, we're going to have to go back and see how we did on our predictions. But here's one that I think we clobbered, and it was the day 366 conversation from Substack, where we said a lot of the corporate comics writers and artists who were taking a big paycheck from Substack to start email newsletters that were subscription-based. We said that day number 366, after that 1-year deal went out, a lot of them would be going back to the way they used to do things. We've got an update. One of the comics writers, and we're not going to use their name because, again, it's not about shaming, but I want to talk about the concept here because there's a moral here that I think we can pull from. One of these folks made a big splash when he signed his Substack deal. And he said, basically, I am getting off Twitter. He said, goodbye, Twitter. I hate social media. This is all crap. It's a wasteland. And I'm going to Substack. And my goal is to never come back to Twitter.
Literally,
and by the way,
literally said that effect. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And by the way, we're not poo-pooing that. There's not a one of us who doesn't feel that way, either at times or all the time. That social media is a vast wasteland. It's a horrible thing that we've set up, and any one of us would love to wash our hands of it. So you can't fault them for that. But the day 366 has come and gone, and I'm telling you, Dave, he's back on Twitter and posting up a storm.
Right, let me just put on these oven mitts because I've got a big thing of humble pie that we could serve this artist.
Yeah, and we've all eaten it, sometimes in this very same episode, but we've all eaten it. But listen. But it isn't about humble pie. Here's what I want you to understand. Here's a person who I'm going to talk to our person listening at home, because this person, this Substack guy, had everything that you and I and our listeners would kill for. A huge amount of name recognition, a huge amount of positive branding, a huge archive of very high quality work. He had it all. And and this thing didn't work out. Why? There's only one thing I'm going to posit, and I'll tell you, I'm going to guess here. Here's my guess. And I don't know this person. If he came up and knocked on the door, I wouldn't know him. Right. But I'm going to guess. Here's one of the things that I think makes the difference between success and failure. And it's understanding the business of independent comics. And as somebody that came from corporate comics, it's understandable that this wasn't in this person's wheelhouse. Okay. But the moral that we can take away from it is that the person listening to us on this podcast at home right now has to start learning business, because it's the business aspect. It's understanding how to make exclusive rewards work. It's understanding how to publish your stuff. It's understanding how to do a print run, how to do a book run, how to do a Kickstart, how to do a Patreon, all of that stuff, that the way that independent, and how to use social media wisely, even though we hate it, using social media wisely as a publishing tool, as a promotional tool, all of those things. That's a community building tool. Understanding independent comics business, I think, might have made the difference for this person. And even if that wasn't a completely 100% accurate, it's something that the person listening to this show at home really needs to focus on. So when they have their opportunity, their version of the Substack deal, they're able to take that and capitalize on it. What do you think, Dave Kellett?
Absolutely. And I just want to point out to something that happened here that I think is unfortunate, because I see it again in different patterns, but artists that torpedo their own career to make a larger point, or they shoot themselves in the foot, basically. Yeah. And in this case, this artist, this famous corporate comic writer, said, "To hell with Twitter. I'm off Twitter. We all hate it. It's a wasteland. See you later, suckers. I'm going to Substack." Well, the smarter thing to be would just be to quietly go over and do the Substack, promote the Substack. Great. Go to the Substack. Leave Twitter alone. Just stop tweeting. Don't do the thing where you're going to have to tail between your legs, come back to Twitter. You know, it's kind of what happens. We see this again and again and again when Patreon changes their terms of service or changes some feature, and you'll see these artists go up, "Oh God, bless America, Twitter or Patreon's the worst. I would leave Patreon if I were you." And it's like, what are you doing? You're scaring off your own patrons. You're scaring off future patrons. And then in a week or two, when this Patreon kerfuffle calms down, you're going to be hat in hand again going, "Hey, join my Patreon." It's like, you dummy. Why were you talking negatively about? What I'm getting at here is there are moments in all of our careers, and I'm going to have it coming up soon if Elon Musk buys Twitter, where we all have to quietly decide how we're going to handle moments of crisis. And the best is to not shoot yourself in the foot, even though the situation might not be to your liking. So I'll just say honestly, if Musk buys Twitter, I'm going to seriously think long and hard about never using Twitter again. But what's probably going to happen, if we're all thinking through this, is that somehow he's either going to be forced out after 2 or 3 years, or he's going to be bought out, or something's going to go seriously awry. We know the guy is a bit of a chaotic agent, and it's not going to go well with both government agencies and things like that. Anyway, what I'm getting at is I shouldn't burn my bridges with my Twitter followers. What I should probably do if he buys it out is just stop posting on Twitter, let it go fallow, and then 2 or 3 years from now, when he's booted out, and we know that'll happen, go back onto Twitter, right? Because my beef was not with my Twitter followers. My beef was with the chaotic agent that bought it out. And so if that happens, that's something that all of us will have to consider. But what I'm getting at is both in terms of this writer leaving for Substack, for the people complaining about Patreon when there's a change of terms of service or some kerfuffle, or in the case with me, if Musk buys Twitter, we all have to say, no, I don't need to purposely hurt my career just for some broader thing of which I have no impact. Act cleverly, act intelligently in those moments, and don't necessarily shoot yourself in the foot, as this writer did when they announced they were going to Twitter and they'd never see social media again, that kind of thing.
No, you're absolutely right. It has a lot of ripple effects, and you don't want to be that person that comes back in a little bit saying, hey, sorry guys, I guess I kind of overshot a little bit. That again, you never really come back from that, or as much as you try to. There's always that element of, hey, this is the guy that just not so long ago told us this whole thing was bullshit, Right.
You're like, why should I be following on Twitter? And again, this goes back to logic. I guess this is my show where I argue for logic, which is it's going to feel great in that moment. You're going to feel like, I'm sticking it to the man. I'm telling Patreon what's what. And you're like, okay, but then next week you're going to be hat in hand. So think it through logically, calmly, intellectually, and handle it, in that way.
Absolutely. Now, Dave, we've got another update, and this is going to be so much fun. It's coming down to the wire. We've got just a little while before this is happening. on November 12th, we are going to be in lovely Santa Rosa, California, doing a live Comic Lab podcast at the Charles Schulz Museum. They want us to come out there and talk about the significance of Charles Schulz on what would have been his 100th birthday. They're planning a huge celebration. They've got a whole bunch of stuff going on that we're going to be part of. And you, the Comic Lab listener, can come out there and join us to make it really special. We're going to be giving away exclusive Comic Lab pins that you can only get at personal appearances.
Yes.
And at 2:00, you can watch us, Dave and I, ascend the stage and do a live recording of this Comic Lab podcast. And I'm telling you, Dave, I'm really, really getting excited. This is going to be an amazing weekend for the Comic Lab listeners.
There are moments in our careers that I think we're going to hold on to in our final days, and this is one of them. I think for those that haven't been, the Schulz Museum it feels like, and I'm just guessing here, it feels like it's about a $20 or $30 million build out. It's very big. It's very beautiful. It's gorgeous light. Santa Rosa is a gorgeous part of California. There are wineries all around it. The downtown is cute as heck. There's a reason why Schulz settled there, right? It's a gorgeous place in the world to live. It's just north of San Francisco, so you could make a 2-day trip out of it. The actual talk is going to be fun as heck. The energy in the room is going to be delightful. We'll probably go long and we'll probably have meetups. We're going to go around the museum. As Brad said, we'll give out the pins. There's also talks that follow us with Al Roker, and a whole who's who of cartoonists are going to have a panel talk after us. It's going to be an incredible weekend, and we really hope you join us because it's going to be, we're looking forward to it like few things in the last couple of years. Hey, if you're listening while you work, take a minute to stand and stretch.
And while you're doing that, we're going to tell you why you should join us on Patreon.
When you do, you're going to get hours and hours of podcasts that we've recorded just for backers.
And exclusive Patreon posts that go even deeper on Comic Lab topics.
And access to our exclusive Discord server, which is a thriving community of professional cartoonists.
So you can support the show you love and get tons of actionable resources for your own cartooning.
And listen, if you can't swing a pledge this month, we get it. No worries.
Yeah, listen, you can still support the show by rating us wherever you get your podcasts.
Just leave a 5-star review and a few kind words.
That, along with mentions on social media, is incredibly helpful.
Now, everybody, let's talk comics.
Dave, I've got one more update. Clip Studio Paint has announced their pricing for their subscription, right? We talked to a couple of episodes ago that they were going to turn to the subscription model. A lot of people were upset about this. I remember saying during the show, I don't care what it is, I'll end up paying it because I like the software so much. They finally came out with their pricing, and listen, we've got nothing to complain about. I'm reading now from the Clip Studio press release. There are several ways you can use version 2.0. You can get it. You can upgrade to the one-time perpetual license of version 2.0 for a single payment. Okay. Or you can go the subscription route, which is an update pass for 12 months. Owners of a one-time purchase license can get this optional plan for early access to features that will be included in version 3.0. For a pro user, it's $9.99. That lasts you for 12 months. For an EX user, that's $28.99. Not even $29. No wonder I couldn't find it. It's $28.99. It's basically about $30.
What a weird price point. $28.99. Okay, keep going.
But it's it's about $30 for 12 months. You can purchase an update pass anytime after the release of version 2.0. When the update pass expires, the features will revert to your one-time purchase license, which you can continue to use for an unlimited period of time. In other words, basically, you'll be able to upgrade to version 2.0, and you're going to have that update pass that's going to give you access to the 3.0 version things that they're going to add to it. And basically, they're doing it at a price point that, let's face it, is downright painless. I've got nothing to complain about with this.
doing some back of envelope math, that's 80 cents a month or $2.40 a month, I think, roughly. Which, come on, that is nothing in the grand scheme of things. I know it's annoying. We all know everything moving to subscription pricing is annoying, but that's not bad if you're handling this in any way in a professional sphere. I can spend that on a pen a month, one pen.
And this is software that you're going to use every day. It's everyday software, and there's nothing that touches it. There's nothing that is nearly as good as Clip Studio Paint. So $30 a year is not really a big ask.
No, not a big ask. All right, well, Brad, let's jump in. I've got a topic that I wanted to bring up because I felt something in my heart, Brad, that I did not like this week, and it was professional jealousy. Ooh. And I don't feel that often, frankly, if I'm being honest about it. But about twice a year, I get a twinge of professional jealousy, and I don't like it about myself because, let's be honest, we're living a very charmed life, Brad. We've both been doing this as our one and only job for years and years and years and years now. We don't have a boss. We are the captains of our fate for the most part. Whether we live or die is a different question, but right now we're captains of our own fate. Yeah. We're producing exactly what we want with no editorial or publisher input. And yet, I felt this strong twinge of jealousy the other day. And so I wanted to ask how you handle jealousy. How do you categorize it? How do you compartmentalize it? When it's a peer or a sub-peer seemingly soaring past you, how do you handle that, Brad? Because for a moment the other day, I was like, darn it, I don't like the fact that I'm feeling jealous about this.
Yeah. Well, there's two little topics that we talked about earlier in the show that are going to converge here. One of which is Captain America and the Avengers, and the other one is I referenced being raised Catholic. And those two are going to converge here because my superpower when it comes to this is denial. Right? You take that emotion, and you push it.
You push it way down
that it exists, and if you wonder how well this works,
and if you're like my great grandparents, that's how Irish poetry came about. Is you push it way down, and then it comes out in the form of beautiful poetry. That's what you do. Yeah.
And if you wonder if that works, you remember that scene where Bruce Banner says, "That's my secret, Cap. I'm always angry." Well, that's my secret, Dave. I'm always suppressing my emotions. So no, literally, so my wife and I have for years and years, when something like this happens, or like if life, hands you a bad break, or you get dealt a bad hand of cards, we always tell each other this in those moments. You got 24 hours to sulk. You got 24 hours. You can walk around the house and be grumpy and sad, and you can kick the can, and you can do whatever, right? You've got 24 hours to be absolutely miserable. After that, you move on. You pick yourself up, brush yourself off, and start doing what you need to get over it. So between denial and giving myself a good 24 hours sulk, like every year. Although this year, I got to tell you, except for this year, every year when an award is announced.
Oh yeah, the Eisners always get me. They always get me. I don't want them to, but they always get me.
Don't do as I say, or do as I say, don't do as I do. You should, listening at home, you should absolutely put yourself up for the Eisners. I stopped this year. I'm like, listen, I'm never going to get an Eisner Award. I didn't even put anything in, and I felt so much better when they announced those awards. But generally, when those awards are announced, I have 24 hours of feeling really pissy. Right. So that's my wife just knows that just let him sulk, and then once that 24 hours is up, I'm very good at saying, OK, that was a good sulk. We're done now. Time to move on and do the things that you need to do to A, be happy, and B, to get even with that son of a gun that flew past you in the first place. Did I mention spite? Sulking and spite.
Yeah, so all the Catholic virtues, you're bringing them all out.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Sulking and spite. Yes, that's great.
Let's not forget spite. Okay, so first you've got denial, then you've got tamping down the emotions, then you've got sulking, and then you've got that whoever that was that flew past you that you're professionally jealous of, or jealous of professionally. Sometimes I'm just professionally jealous, which is a whole new different thing. But if you're jealous professionally about that other person, now you take that spite and you put it in your engine like a high octane gasoline, and you put your pedal to the metal and you take off.
Holy hell, is that true? Because, so I think you and I would both agree that I tend to be a cheery, optimistic, thankful person. I'm happy about going through my life and all that sort of stuff. But feeling jealousy this week, and it was strong, this jealousy that I felt, like in a way that doesn't happen to me very often. Yeah. But here's what happened. Holy hell, did it power me, because I finished 3 drive pages in the early part of this week. Because I was like, that son of a I'm going to write the best goddamn sci-fi, and it's not going to, I might not finish for another decade, but it's going to be an incredible 5-book series, and son of a bitch, I'm going to do it. And holy hell, if it didn't power me in a way that, like, they often say when you use drugs, you're stealing from your future self, like you're getting energy, but you're stealing from your future self. And I a little bit feel like that's what professional jealousy was for me, is that I was powered like hell. I produced 3 drive pages, but once this jealousy wears off, I'm going to go and just flop onto a couch, because I powered through 3 pages lickety split, but it was just based on anger, and that's not a way to go through life.
You're just grinding your teeth as you're drawing these. We're going to go back and look at those 3 pages, because there's this psychological thing that happens. Like if I'm drawing somebody smiling, I'm smiling.
Yes,
right.
Yes.
All of your characters in these 3 pages are going to have furrowed eyebrows and gritted teeth and balled up fists.
Yeah, and every second line of dialogue is that guy,
Oh, I want to stop this show right now and find out who the hell you're talking about.
When the microphones go off, I'm gonna give you the whole rundown. You're gonna be like, yep. I'm just gonna be like, another New York Times piece.
Yeah, I'm surprised I didn't get a call over this weekend, for crying out loud.
No, because I poured myself right into the drive pages. I was like, the only way to beat this is through work. I'm going to work my way through this.
I got to tell you, those are the best Dave Kellett conversations. When the spite is really coming out of Dave Kellett, those are the best conversations.
Well, because it's the way of my people. What the Irish do is they bury it way down, and then, Brad, it just explodes, and it either explodes creatively or explodes with the most cutting humor that you've ever been faced with, and you're like, oh God, I'm gonna go crawl into a corner. It's a great way to go through life.
So I'm gonna posit a hypothesis. Is professional jealousy a good thing?
I mean, So this is where I was kind of arriving at this point too. Is that I finished these 3 pages and I was like, wait, has this been a driver in my career for years? And I quietly haven't been admitting it to myself, that a little bit of spite and a little bit of professional jealousy and a little bit of I'll show them and a little bit of like, now they'll rue the day they blankety blank Dave Kellett or whatever wrote me off or this or that. And so then I pour it into my work, and by God, it does power some work, doesn't it? I mean, it's not nothing. It is a little bit of octane.
When the story of Brad Guigar is written, do you know how many people are in the Rue the Day chapter? Do you know how people are out there right now scheduled to be ruing days left and right? There's a lot of day ruing going on out there.
Day ruing.
There's a lot of days that are going to be rude if I have to die trying. No, I totally get that Rue the Day bit.
Well, and let's be honest about this. What we're saying right now, it sounds unlikable, because it is unlikable. No one wants it. No one wants to know that it, like, Picasso. Well, Picasso was absolutely driven by spite, but no one wants to know that, like, Bill Watterson had a professional jealousy, for example, or Charles Schulz had a professional jealousy. But they did. They absolutely were trying to outwork their peers. But here's the thing too: is that ultimately, I think what this comes from is that you and I, as independent artists, we have to be our own champions. And we have to be the instigators of our work. We have to make our own magic. No one else is going to tell us to make this magic, you know? And so part of being your own champion is also being your own defender. And what professional jealousy is it's your ego defending the time, the effort, the work that you have put in so far, and saying, no, you are not less than. You're worth it. Keep going. Don't you think? I mean, if I'm trying to find a positive, basically, in this shitty attitude.
Listen, no, I mean, we're joking. We're doing a little bit of hyperbole about, you know, denial and spite and sulking and all this other stuff. But I will say that I own that part of my personality. And I think that it's been a good thing. I think I've said on the show before, spite has gotten me a long way. Here's where anybody listening to us at home, I want to put a little bit of a capper on that. Yes, you can use spite as a motivator. Yes, it's okay to let yourself sulk for 24 hours. Yes, sometimes you've got to put a little bit of denial into your heart, but the place where you got to draw a line is that when it starts to affect how you see the world around you. In other words, I think that kind of stuff is good in your personal zone, but then you've got to be also able to see the rest of the world clearly and realize that whomever this person that Dave is talking about, I'm gonna go out on a limb and say whomever this person that Dave is talking about, whatever success that was, is a rising tide that in some way is going to lift all ships. Right? Because that's how webcomics has always worked. You know, somebody else's success in webcomics has always meant to an extent, hey, you're bringing more people in, making them aware of webcomics. They're reading your webcomic. That means eventually they might read my webcomic. You're bringing them into Patreon. That's fantastic. That means eventually, now that they've got their Patreon account set up, maybe they'll become one of my backers. Same thing with Kickstarter. Same thing with social media, and on and on and on. It's always been this common denominator of a rising tide raising all ships. And you can't let yourself be so overcome by spite that you're not able to also see that. And after you get your 24-hour sulk done, then you can say, but you know what? Good for them. I'm glad they succeeded, because eventually that just helps the entire community. Am I right about that?
No, you're 100% right.
Oh, good. Thank God. It's the first time today. Oh, oh my God. My confidence has taken such a beating today.
No, Brad, you are a wonderful person and you make this world better, and I'm happy you exist. Let's put that out there. No, what I'm saying is the kind, optimistic, gracious side of me also immediately says, and partially why my guilt kicks in, is they are producing beautiful work and they do deserve the praise they're getting. And they are elevating the art of comics, and they are bringing in a bigger tent, and I am thankful that they exist, right? Yeah. So then the guilt kicks in because I'm feeling jealousy about that. But really what it is that it's the 9-year-old of me that's saying, oh, they got a piece of cake, I want a piece of cake, you know? Right. Yeah. And it's a stupid feeling. So yes, what I'm saying is you also have to balance it out, because you don't want to turn this into bitterness, which is a different and not helpful mood. Yes. Like professional jealousy, if you use it as a motivator, is wonderful. If it turns inward and cyclical and becomes bitter, then it becomes, the world doesn't get me, or the system's out to get me, or these people are holding me down. That is not a healthy attitude, I think. And that's why you have to allow for the graciousness and the kindness of saying, but they do deserve it. They're good at what they do. And by the way, even if it's not for you, if their work is not for you, it's for someone, and it's clearly for a lot of someone's, because it's working. And that's why you just have to be gracious about it and say, you know what, though, if they can make it work with the way they're handling their art career, I can make it work with the way I'm handling my art career. And in so doing, you're motivated rather than becoming bitter and turning in on yourself.
And that's the last part of this whole thing, the great revenge is once you've done all of that Dave's talking about, like you just intimated, you take a look at, okay, now what's the building blocks of that person's success, and what can I steal for myself?
Yes,
what can I use from what they're doing? What does this tell me? It's too bad that they rocketed past me today, but what can I steal to rocket past them tomorrow, beating them at their own game?
Absolutely. And I'll steal a page from Dylan McConis one time said, that, and I don't want to attribute to her things that she didn't say, but one of her superpowers is she makes other cartoonists her friend. And that's a wonderful thing in terms of like not only celebrating their work as well, but also saying like, no, this is something we can do together. Like this person that I'm feeling professionally jealous of, they are a peer and they're also a fellow cartoonist that's elevating the art form. And so that's something that can be done together as friends. And so anyway, yes, it's a motivator. It's a thing that you can learn from. It's also a source of inspiration in the sense that once you see it, you can be it. And so once they do certain things in art or in publishing or in public relations or in media or marketing, you go, like Brad said, I'm going to learn from that. Now that I know that that's possible, how could I apply that to my career? Now that I know that I could get a New York Times article written about me, how do I go about doing it? And so then in so doing, you start taking positive steps. So yes, ultimately, this shitty jealous feeling that you have can be turned to a positive. And I think that's ultimately the best way you can look at it is take the 24 hours, like Brad said, and then start to apply it.
Absolutely. So, Dave, to wrap up the show today, I've got a delightful question I think you're going to like. And this one comes in from Eric, who says, hey, did either of you create any original comics as children? And if so, do you remember what they were about? So, Dave, going back in the Wayback Machine, the stuff that we were doing when we were like 8, 9, 10, 12 years old, early, middle, it was called junior high in Bad Axe, Michigan, probably middle school, every place else, junior high, high school. What was your early comics like?
So I know what they were like because I still have them. By hook or by crook, over dozens of moves, I've kept a box that has, I know exactly where it is in my garage, that has my 3rd grade cartoons, that each page was a comic. And you would flip the spiral notebook and then the next page. But by the way, I think we could all agree a spiral notebook, the best medium to capture a comic in. Yeah, exactly.
I've got one right here.
I think as a kid, it was A, this was the paper I have lying around. B, it keeps it all together. Because I remember being angry that I had drawn some sort of loose leaf comics that they got lost or they blew away or they got wet or something. And so when I had them in this notebook, they were all there. I could pass it to a friend and say, hey, you want to read my comics? And they would flip through and laugh. And any pages I didn't like, I would just tear out. So I have 3 spiral bound books in my garage of a comic strip that I did in 3rd grade. And I don't know why I thought this was clever. The name of the comic was Doomsday with 3 O's. Again, this is a 9-year-old thinking that they're clever. But what's funny is it was a proto Sheldon. It was
really?
one character living with a menagerie of animals. There was a duck, a rat, a dog, and a cat. And they lived with that menagerie and they just had various adventures and it was stupid. And they were also in the same way of Deadpool or She-Hulk, they were aware of being a comic. And kind of Dogman-esque. Anyway, how about you? What is your first memory of early childhood comics?
My gosh, I had so many comics. I did the same thing. If only there had been back then, and I'm sure there is now. In fact, I've got, fancy sketchbooks that are bound. But just a sketchbook, if I could have gotten my hands on one that didn't have those freaking lines in them, right? Those lines always drove me crazy. The little blue lines. But I had so many notebooks that I filled up with illustration after illustration. I had so many different, and of course it was always, well, not always superhero. I had 2 things that I really like: superhero comics and trying to do that kind of Mad Magazine satire. Right. I loved that. And I was trying to do that so much. I don't know whether here's a comic. I've got to go back and read it. It's just terrible. And I'm trying to find a date on it. I didn't date it, but here's a character that I did. That was like a spy or like an undercover agent. Right.
Yeah.
And he was like, there's an entire book.
Wow.
I don't know how many pages this is. 26 pages of absolute
Which, by the way,
magazine.
as a kid, 26 pages was a bonkers number of work.
I got it. I haven't read this. Speaking of stuff that you've let sit, I haven't read this in probably decades. I'm very interested now because literally when we talked about doing this topic, I went over because I've got all the same as you, box full of old stuff, and I went right to it. And also, I mean, look at that. Look at that.
Oh.
Is that not a
So
face
for those for everyone at home,
you can
Brad
love?
is holding up a photo of what can only be described as a helmet of hair on Brad Guigar, which, first of all, very different from what I'm looking at today.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
And glasses that were not sized for your face. I mean, every mom did this to their kid. They're like, these are $10 cheaper. We're getting the ones that are... I mean, you look like you're designing for a New York fashion house in 1975 with those glasses on. Look at those glasses.
Big plastic rims. And of course, I got the glasses that if you walked outside, they were supposed to turn into sunglasses. But what happened is that they were always half sunglasses no matter where you were. You remember those?
No, there's no one asking this Brad Guigar to dance at the 8th grade dance on with those glasses on. Oh, God. All right.
It's just, will somebody please steal this kid's lunch money? Is what this look looks like. But let me ask you.
Will no one punch this child in the gut?
Yes. But let me ask. So I did tons of I saw a Cerebus ad, and so I started drawing like the entire Avengers as aardvarks because I thought that was such a cool character design.
Oh, thank God you got out of that phase. All right, keep going. Yeah.
And then I drew the entire Justice League as sharks that were upright sharks, right? Because I thought Jabberjaws was cool. Here, I'm going to have to scan some of these in. Here's a whole comedy page that I did for the back of a program. All of these Mad Magazine kind of illustrations. But I did, and tell me if this sounds familiar. Every time the band had a concert and they needed somebody to design the cover of the,
I know where you're going.
Of the little
Anytime
program.
there was a school fun run or the yearbook needed a page filled, you drew it. Yep, exactly.
Yep.
That was me.
What was that about that? That every opportunity to get my art, to get my comics in front of people, whether it was a band concert or a fun run or a little illustration for the back of a T-shirt, man, I was the man. I was like, I'll do that. That's what I'll do.
Because speaking of dopamine from that earlier question, 9, 10, 11, 12-year-old us learned early that like sharing it with friends was the best part of cartoon making. Like it was fun to draw it. It was fun to write it. It was fun to color it if you did that sort of thing. But once you shared it, that was the magic moment when you saw somebody laugh or giggle or it got passed around class. And then that dopamine hit was like, well, yeah, I'll design the fun run shirt, or yeah, I'll do the yearbook page, and the pride of it, right? And so we got that in our gut. And then in high school, we did whatever little meandering high school newspapers they did. In college, I don't know about you, but the first thing I did was walk over to the college newspaper and be like, hey, do you guys take comic strips? For me, I never did superheroes at a young age, unlike you, because, and I think I can speak truthfully about this, that Ira Glass has this point that, you know, your creative side has to keep up with your editorial side. And it's this ladder climb of sometimes the editorial eye is stronger than what you can produce. Sometimes your production it gets higher than your editorial eye. When I was a kid, I was not a good artist, Brad. I say this with love to my younger self. I was not a good artist. And I would try to draw a superhero, but my editorial eye would be like, well, this is a steaming pile. What is this all about? But I knew that a comic strip was a little more forgiving of someone who was learning to draw. And so I dove into that big time, you know, and kind of never really went back to superhero comics. So for me, it was all comic strips all the time. And once I was in the mode of sharing, God, I was just looking for a bigger and bigger hit in terms of crowd reaction. I was constantly looking for a bigger crowd to get that dopamine hit.
It was the only way a guy like me was going to get noticed, right? And that's what you were kind of doing it for, was to get noticed, whether it was by girls, because it was the only way you could get girls to notice you, or whether it was to even to be noticed among the guys. Like, this is the thing that Brad can do. He can't hit the baseball.
Right, because no one was picking Brad or Dave Kellett for kickball. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. He can't hit for beans. If he goes out for football, he's going to get murdered. But he can do this thing. So it was a way to stand out, to be noticed. And I wonder, so what is it about cartoonists in general? We, as a person, we are, if you were to stereotype every cartoonist you've ever met, very introverted, to themselves people, right? If you meet them in person, they probably don't talk a whole lot. Right. Or in their families, they're probably known as the quiet one. But then when it comes to comics, it's the most extroverted thing in the world. It's all, hey, look at me. Hey, this is the thing I'm doing. Take a look at that. In person, they're an extrovert. On paper, in person, they're an introvert. On paper, they're an extrovert. What is that?
Well, because we get to be, and this has been said 1,000 ways by different people, but we get to be the actor, the director, the writer, the prop manager, the stage manager. And so we get to live out the life of all the theatrical things that all the drama kids did. But because we were a little shyer, we did it on the page, and they did it in real life, And like you, I was an introvert / ambivert. And so I would default towards wanting to be quiet or by myself. And my childhood drawing, I look back at it and I'm proud of that little 9 or 10-year-old that started drawing and frankly had the guts to share it, because that's nerve-wracking the first couple times. I don't know what in me was like, oh, you got to share this. You got to pass it around class. But I'm so glad that younger version of me did.
And stuck with it, even though the younger version of you had an eye that said, this isn't there yet. And you put everything on yet.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that you were able to stay with, because listen, I'll scan some of this stuff in and post it. If for no other reason,
please do, Brett. The world needs to see that character in a trench coat. That's what.
Take a look at me. It doesn't end. It doesn't end. But if nothing else, one of my favorite phrases, especially in talking to younger artists, is that it's very difficult to get worse at something that you do every day. And if you take a look at this drawing of Iron Man, you can see that I got better. It took a while. That's from 1985.
Since it's a podcast, for those listening at home, Brad just lifted up a drawing of what I assume was the Michelin Man, but he kind of was made out of iron.
And my way of drawing muscles was, it looked like somebody had stuffed a bunch of walnuts into up the person's sleeves. But listen,
there's just a family of squirrels under a rubber outfit. Yeah, that's Iron Man. There you go. Good job, 10-year-old Brad.
But for no other reason, it is that it's hard to get better, or it's hard. You can tell I'm running out of steam. It's hard to get worse at something that you do every day. And even if right now you're feeling like you're posting things that aren't getting traction on social media, you've been posting for 10 years and you're not where you want to be yet. You're any number of things that we talked about in this very episode, right? The thing about it is that be like that young Dave Kellett. And remember to say, listen, I'm not there, but I'm not there yet. And that's the key phrase, is yet.
That is a beautiful way of putting it. And quite sincerely, that's beautiful. I'm not there yet. And I know where I want to go. I mean, in a way, aren't you thankful that young Brad and young Dave, among all the trials of like trying to become a better artist and trying to break in, I always, even at a young age, I was always grateful that I knew what I wanted to be.
Yeah.
And a lot of my friends, even 20s, 30s, 40s, sometimes even in the 50s, are like, I don't know what I want to be yet. And I always knew I wanted to be a cartoonist. And so there was a joy and a foundational joy in knowing that that's what I wanted to be. And yes, it was going to take me a decade. Yes, it was going to take me 15, 20 years. But by God, I was going to get there because I really knew that I wanted to be a cartoonist. Was that true? I'm assuming that was true for you.
There was only one thing. All my friends wanted to be firemen or firefighters or professional chefs or professional football players. I just wanted one thing from as early as I could remember, and that was to be a cartoonist. This was my one thing. And again, just like you, I knew that I wasn't as great at drawing as a lot of people around me, but I knew I could out hustle them. I could outwork them. I could out practice them. I knew I wasn't as good at writing humor as a lot of the people around me. Oh gosh, that was one of the toughest parts about meeting you and Scott and Chris when we first started doing Webcomics Weekly. I got a weekly reminder that I am nowhere near as funny as these guys, and I better step it up and work on that because
we felt that too. Yeah.
Son of a gun! I can't believe I left myself open for that. But no, but I knew I could get there if I kept. I knew I wasn't there, but I wasn't.
And you will
there
someday.
Yet.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And still, I'm still hoping. I'm still hoping.
No, I'm joking. But like, here's the thing too. And the thing that I came to realize and to love in my 20s was that I realized that I had picked an art form where by sheer will, I could create the art that I needed to make. And here's what I mean by that is I had friends who wanted to be a playwright.
Right.
Great. Wonderful. Yes. What a wonderful art form to be a playwright. Yeah. The problem with being a playwright is you have to convince 5, 12, 20 other people to buy in on your dream, your art, your editorial viewpoint so that play gets staged. You have to get the money for it, the producer, you have to get the director on board, you have to get the cast on board, you have to get everybody on board with the look of it. But as a cartoonist, I could do all of it by sheer willpower alone. And whether it was powered by wanting it from childhood or occasional career jealousy, I was gonna become a cartoonist. And so in my 20s, I found real joy that the thing that I really wanted to be, that I knew I wanted to be, I could do on my own and make it happen on my own. I could make my own magic. And that was a wonderful thing.
Yeah. And even if it wasn't there, you could work on it. And every time you did it, it got a little bit better.
Yes.
That's the bottom line. Every time you did it, you got a little bit better. And that's why we're going to be back here next week trying to be a little bit better at doing a comics advice podcast. Because listen, we're coming in on our 5th year, and by golly, one of these times we're going to get it. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but we're going to keep at it until we've got it right. And then finally, when we've recorded the ultimate episode of Comic Lab, you will hear me for the final time say that you've been listening to Comic Lab, the show about making comics and making a living from comics.
Your hosts have been my friend Brad Guigar, the editor of webcomics.com and the creator of Evil Inc. at evil-comic.com.
And my close personal friend Dave Kellett, the currently seething co-director of the comics documentary Stripped, and the spiteful cartoonist of Sheldon at sheldoncomics.com and Drive at drivecomic3pagesonaweekend.com.
Powered by jealousy and spite. I got to tell you though, Brad, a 5th year anniversary gift. You know, I don't know how this cultural thing got started, but you know, different anniversaries have different kinds of gifts.
Yeah.
And the gift for a 5th year anniversary, which Comic Lab is coming up on, is a gift made out of wood. So I don't know what people want to give the podcast, but a nice frame of Brad and I smiling, perhaps.
Yes.
A gentle statue of Brad holding up the hope for future cartooning. That could be lovely. Yeah. Something carved out of wood.
A toothpick sculpture.
A toothpick, or just a toothpick. That could be the extent of your friendship. The Comic Lab theme song is used with permission from Andy Creighton at theworldrecord.net, and this episode was edited by the wonderful Matt Woodard of Woodsong Productions over at www.woodsong.media.
If you love Comic Lab, you can rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify, and you may hear your review featured on a future episode like this one. Listen to this, Dave. You are going to love this. This came in on the Comic Lab Discord server, and this person said, I started my comic adventures with a friend at the end of last year. Using the guides and experience in the podcast, it went well. And we've made a few short comics, and we've also animated recently. Now listen to this, Dave. They go on to say, my friend who does the art decided to go to university and took up comic making as one of the courses. And their teacher has nothing to criticize because she's been following the tips and tricks from Comic Lab. The teacher thought she'd been at it for years.
Hey, that's fantastic.
I love
to hear
that.
it. That is
love
great.
this.
Thank you for the kind words. And also, just a reminder, thank you all for continuing to rate 5 stars over at Spotify for ComicLab. We are continuing to be the #1 comics and comic podcast over on Spotify, and that is thanks to you. So take a second, if you're a Spotify user, go over and give it a quick 5-star ranking, and we will appreciate it so much. And ComicLab is made possible by your support on patreon.com/ComicLab. So I will go ahead and say it twice with a little bit more gusto. Patreon.com/ComicLab. Hey, that's America's ass.
I'm Captain America.
The self-describer. I'm Captain America.